Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving deep into the world of Alan Tibby, also known as Acharya Das.
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting.
It is. As we sift through online posts, court documents, news articles, all trying to give us a picture of this guy.
A real mixed bag of sources.
Yeah. You might be asking yourself, who is this guy? And why should I care? Well, that's exactly what we're going to find out. We're untangling the threads of his story from New Zealand to, well, we'll see where it goes. Accusations of financial fraud, whispers of cult practices, and even a little bit of Hollywood.
It's all in there.
It is. What's really interesting is how all these threads seem to connect Tibby to all these organizations and individuals, some of whom have had some serious legal issues.
Exactly, like piecing together a puzzle.
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning. Tibby's early life in Twizel, New Zealand. We see him involved with a film company called Tea Leaf Productions, working on a movie called The Lost Prince.
Sounds innocent enough.
Right. Well, here's where things get a little sticky. A former MP, Alec Neil, publicly accused the production of being a front for a religious cult, maybe even a drug ring.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now, Neil did end up apologizing for these claims in a defamation lawsuit, but these early accusations kind of set the stage for what seems to be a recurring theme in Tibby's story. Controversy follows him.
A pattern of behavior. Or just a string of bad luck.
Yeah, I mean, it's a question we should keep in mind. Are we seeing a pattern of behavior, or is this just, a bunch of coincidences? What do you think?
Jury's still out on that one.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch out for as we go through this.
Right.
And speaking of things to watch out for, these accusations link Tibby to the Science of Identity Foundation, AC, a group founded by Chris Butler. But, and this is a big but, there's this Facebook post where Tibby denies ever being a member.
Interesting.
Outright denies it.
Yeah, especially since there are photos that seem to show him with Butler.
Exactly. So it raises questions about his involvement with SIF, an organization that's been at the center of, well, quite a few controversies. Former members alleging cult-like practices and financial exploitation.
Like trying to catch smoke.
Yeah, exactly. And just when you think you're starting to get a grasp on things, the story jumps across the world to Australia. Tibby was allegedly involved with the Australian School of Meditation.
Okay.
Now, some sources suggest that members of SIF in Poland were encouraged to work for free in businesses associated with this school. Is there a coordinated effort to exploit labor in all these organizations?
Yeah, if you connect that to the bigger picture, it starts to paint a concerning picture, makes you wonder about the real nature of these organizations.
Absolutely. And if that's not enough, hold on tight, because we're going to India, where a police document from Chennai accuses Tibby of financial fraud and money laundering, all connected to his involvement with QNet.
QNet.
Yeah, QNet. It's a multi-level marketing company that's been accused of being a pyramid scheme.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, and to make things even more interesting, this police document calls Tibby a fugitive, implying he left India to avoid any legal consequences. Talk about adding an element of mystery.
Definitely raises the stakes.
It does. And the QNet connection is crucial, because it links Tibby to this whole global network of businesses and people, some of whom have faced serious legal trouble. But we should say QNet has repeatedly denied these allegations. They say they're a legitimate direct selling company.
So, more conflicting narratives, accusations on one side, denials on the other. It's hard to tell what's really going on.
Exactly. It makes it hard to sort out the truth. And just when you think it can't get more complicated, Tibby's daughter enters the story.
Oh, boy.
One source alleges that she was involved in massaging Chris Butler. Now, I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but considering the power dynamics within SIF and the allegations against Butler, this detail is a little, well, unsettling.
It definitely adds to that sense of unease.
It does. And then, it's a reminder that this story isn't just about businesses and legal battles. It's about real people and their lives.
Yeah, that human element.
Exactly. And as we keep going, things get a bit darker with allegations of drug trafficking. Former SIF members claim Tibby was involved, associating him with a convicted drug dealer named Patrick Bowler.
Wow.
Now, it's important to note, these allegations are mainly from former members and haven't been proven in court.
Right.
But the fact that these claims exist, along with everything else, paints a troubling picture of Tibby's potential actions. And there's even a Facebook post that highlights a newsletter, apparently from one of the organizations connected to Butler, describing a school in the Philippines, allegedly sponsored by this Bowler guy, where young boys were taught to be brahmacaris, basically student monks.
That's concerning.
Yeah. It raises some serious questions about the environment in these schools, the potential for exploitation or abuse. And it makes you think twice about the information coming from these organizations.
Absolutely.
So we've got allegations of cult-like behavior, financial fraud, possible drug trafficking, potentially exploitative schools, all linked to Alan Tibby. What's standing out to you so far? What's making you go, interesting?
It's the contrast, you know? On one hand, you've got these serious accusations, but then you also have people who genuinely admire Tibby and his teachings. It's a real head-scratcher.
It is. It's a puzzle. And adding to that puzzle, there's a Facebook post that questions Tibby's loyalty to Butler and his organization. It highlights his alleged involvement with QNet in India, despite being labeled a fugitive there.
Ah, okay.
So maybe there are internal conflicts, shifting alliances within this whole network of people and organizations. And it makes you think about everyone's motivations, who's accusing, who's defending, why.
Yeah, like everyone's playing some kind of complicated game.
Exactly. It's like a game of chess, and we're trying to figure out the rules. And we've only just scratched the surface of Alan Tibby's story. There's a lot more to uncover, especially when it comes to his financial dealings.
Can't wait to dive deeper.
We'll get into that next time. Stay tuned. You know, when I started digging into Tibby's finances, I thought it'd be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, follow the money, right.
Exactly. But it's anything but straightforward. His financial dealings are all mixed up with these religious and social circles. It's a tangled web, to say the least.
Definitely not a straight line.
No. Remember Tidleaf Productions, that film company back in New Zealand? Well, a court document shows that an investor actually backed out of their movie The Lost Prince because of all the controversies around the group.
So it wasn't just bad press in general.
Right. It was bad press that was specifically tied to those accusations of cult activity and those potential criminal connections.
Ouch. It's gotta hurt.
Yeah, I mean, that's a major setback for any film production. It shows how these allegations had real-world consequences. Makes you wonder, were these ventures really about creative expression? Or was there something else going on?
Right, what were their motives?
Exactly. And speaking of motives, let's go back to QNet. The sources we're looking at paint a pretty disturbing picture of their business practices.
Disturbing how?
Well, one Facebook post even calls it a Ponzi scheme. It claims people were lured in with promises of making tons of money, but those rewards depended on constantly recruiting new people, not on actually selling products.
Ah, I see.
And then you've got multiple news articles and legal documents that detail investigations and regulatory actions against QNet in different countries. They faced accusations of money laundering, deceptive marketing. Some people even claim they lost their life savings.
Classic too good to be true scenario.
Yeah. And it raises some big ethical questions about these multi-level marketing companies. It's hard to tell where legitimate business ends and exploitation begins. But one thing's clear. Tibby's alleged connection to QNet is definitely a red flag, especially with the financial fraud allegations and his fugitive status in India.
Right. That's not a good look.
Not at all. But to be fair, QNet has always denied these allegations. They say they run a legitimate multi-level marketing business. They talk about entrepreneurship, personal development, financial empowerment. It's a very different story from what their critics are saying.
So two completely different versions of reality.
Yeah. On one side, you've got accusations of deception and exploitation. And then on the other side, you've got this narrative of empowerment and opportunity. It really makes you wonder, who's telling the truth? Is there even one single truth here? Maybe it all depends on your perspective.
It's all about perspective.
Right, and that's what makes this whole thing so difficult to figure out. There are always multiple perspectives, and it's up to us to weigh the evidence and come to our own conclusions. Now, we've been focusing a lot on the negative stuff about Tibby, but we should also acknowledge that there's another side of this story. There are people who genuinely admire Alan Tibby and find his teachings valuable.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. One source, it's a heartfelt letter, talks about how Tibby could inspire his followers with his knowledge of deeper spiritual stuff. The author even praises Tibby's connections with other respected spiritual figures, suggesting that he's part of a lineage of genuine teachers.
So to some, he's a true spiritual guide.
Exactly. And that positive view clashes with all the darker stuff, creating a really confusing, multifaceted picture.
Yeah, it's not simple at all.
It's not. It's a good reminder that this isn't just about abstract ideas or court cases. We're dealing with real people and the impact these organizations and individuals had on their lives.
Real people, real lives.
Yes. And speaking of impact, there are these hints of internal conflict, shifting loyalties within this network. Remember that Facebook post questioning Tibby's loyalty to Chris Butler?
Yeah, I remember that.
It suggests that even within these tight-knit groups, there can be disagreements, power struggles. It reminds us that these organizations aren't just one big blob. They're made up of individuals with their own agendas and beliefs.
Right, their own motivations.
And as things change, so do relationships and loyalties. So here we are with all these accusations, denials, different viewpoints, personal stories. It's a lot to process. And I'm sure you're starting to form your own opinions about Alan Tibby. But before we wrap up, there's one final twist, and it's maybe the most surprising one. It involves Tibby's connection to politics.
Politics. Okay, this should be good.
It is. Up until now, we've seen how Tibby's actions have mostly played out within these closed circles, religious groups, business ventures. But now we're going to see how his influence may extend to the world of politics, specifically in Hawaii.
Interesting.
Several sources suggest that Tibby's group was actively supporting certain political candidates, maybe even using political positions to make money and provide jobs for their members.
If that's true, that's pretty concerning.
It is. It raises questions about undue influence and potential conflicts of interest. Like, the group might be using their resources and their organization to push their own agenda in the political arena.
Wow. So who are these politicians they were supposedly supporting?
Well, one source points to the Gabbard family, specifically Mike Gabbard and his daughter Tulsi Gabbard. It claims their political careers were basically serving their spiritual master, Chris Butler.
Hold on, Tulsi Gabbard, the former congresswoman.
The one and only. Now, these are serious allegations, so we need to be careful. But the fact that they exist adds another layer of complexity to Tibby's story. It makes you wonder, how far does this network's influence reach?
It's like uncovering a hidden power structure.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We've gone from a small film company to allegations of international fraud, cult-like behavior, and now possible political influence. It's a reminder that even seemingly normal people can be connected to these big events and these complex webs of power. And that's what's so fascinating about this whole thing. You know, we started with a small film production in New Zealand, and now we're talking about international fraud, cult-like behavior, and political influence. It's crazy to think that one person can be connected to all of this.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the bigger picture, doesn't it? Like how these seemingly separate things can all be intertwined.
Exactly. We've covered a lot, but there's one last twist to this story. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
It involves Tulsi Gabbard, the politician we were just talking about, and a pretty shocking turn of events.
Okay, I'm all ears. What happened?
So remember how we were talking about her possible connections to Tibby's group and all that? Well, fast forward to 2024, and she's appointed as the Director of National Intelligence by Donald Trump.
Wait, what?
Seriously.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, right? I mean, she was a Democratic congresswoman, even ran for president in 2020. Her political views are pretty progressive, but then she ends up taking this top-level position from Trump, who, well, represents a very different ideology.
That's a huge jump. I mean, it doesn't really make sense on the surface.
I know, right? It left a lot of people scratching their heads. Some people think it means she's totally switched political sides. Others see it as a strategic move. Maybe she's ambitious. Maybe she just wants more power. And some people probably still think she's under the influence of Chris Butler.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard to know what's going on in her head. But her appointment by Trump definitely throws a wrench into our understanding of this whole network and their supposed political influence.
Yeah.
It shows that even when we think we have it all figured out, there are always these missing pieces and surprises.
Yeah. Human motivation is a complicated thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
The mix of power beliefs, personal ambition that's hard to untangle. So what does all of this mean? We've gone from this quiet town in New Zealand to the streets of Chennai, uncovered allegations of financial crimes, cult-like behavior, and even a connection to Hollywood. What stands out to you about Alan Tibby?
I think what's most striking is the contrast. You know, on one hand, you've got these serious accusations making him seem like a manipulative person involved in illegal stuff. But then on the other hand, you have people who really admire him. And his teachings, they describe him as a wise and compassionate leader. It's confusing.
It is. It really makes you wonder, how can we reconcile these totally opposite viewpoints?
Yeah, maybe by looking at the bigger context, the history and beliefs of those organizations he was involved with, their influence on people.
It's definitely something to think about. And remember, the information we've discussed today is just one piece of the puzzle. There's always more to uncover, more viewpoints to consider, more questions to ask. The journey doesn't end here, so keep digging, keep questioning, and stay open-minded as you navigate this fascinating and often unsettling story.